What's up, y'all? I'm Frosty, and Marvel Strike Force has a new character coming out, Doctor Voodoo. We've seen his kit, we've seen their stuff, but who are they? I'm here to tell you that. My name is Frosty. I am an avid comic book reader. I obsessively read comic books, all that stuff, going through characters and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a little background of Doctor Voodoo that you may not get from our esteemed rulers of the Marvel Strike Force developers, right? Ooh. So we're gonna talk about them a little bit today. Cool. So here we go. So, Dr. Voodoo. Okay, number one, right? To my Marvel Strike Force people, I've been in chats on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook, and everyone is complaining about how Dr. Voodoo looks. This actually is a costume that Dr. Voodoo wears. Everyone's like, that's not him, blah, 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 blah. Current run in Strange Academy, Dr. Voodoo is the number 2, debatably number 1 if you're keeping up with the comics, in charge of Strange Academy. He's essentially the assistant headmaster of Hogwarts, if you will. So Dr. Voodoo is running it all, and that is his teaching garb. So the fact that they put it in there is a shout out to the comic fans, and I love it. I love it. I know people wanted the OG with the cape and stuff like that, and he wears that sometimes in Strange Academy too when he's in fighting, but this is his teaching garb. So that's where that comes from. Dr. Voodoo, Dr. Jericho Drum. First appearance, Strange Tales, number 169, 1973. This is a Doctor Strange run early on. Yeah. And he is, I love to point out, Dr. Voodoo is a doctor. He has a PhD. It's fantastic. So, powers and abilities. So, this dude's actually pretty jacked. He does voodoo magic, spells, and phrases. So, meaning his strength, his base of skills and knowledge is in voodoo magic, but he also can tap into chaos magic, arcane magic, all the different types of magics that kind of exist within the Marvel realm. His specialty is voodoo, right? And he's known for using the voodoo, and that's what you typically see him using. He reanimates bodies, he controls souls of the dead, and he can possess people with those souls of the dead, which I'll talk about quite a bit here in a bit. Aliases: Brother Voodoo, Sorcerer Supreme, and He Who Has Died Twice. So, in becoming, and once again, I'm going to hit this a little bit more specifically in a bit, but in becoming Dr. Voodoo, he actually dies, right? He dies and comes back to life, which gives him the title, He Who Has Died Twice. So, Brother Voodoo so Dr. Voodoo is the character, Brother Voodoo is the superhero. Bear with me. Affiliations: the Midnight Suns, Strange Academy, Avengers, and S.H.I.E.L.D. So Strange Academy, we'll talk about Midnight Suns because everybody in Marvel Strike Force wants Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is essentially any magic user in Marvel who has come into contact with Lilith, who's like the demon queen or whatever. So any of those magicians. So this Midnight Suns, it actually has quite the 9 kind of rotate. But Bats, who's a spectral dog, is on the Midnight Suns. But also Dr. Voodoo, Doctor Strange. Pretty much just what Scarlet Spider's in there. There's a bunch of people that are in the Midnight Suns. So it's kind of like Magic Avengers. Strange Academy. Strange Academy is an academy Doctor Strange founded. It's essentially Hogwarts for magic users in Marvel. And they do kind of act as their own team. Their line's going on right now. It's a very modern comic. They're on issue 15, I think. And they're really good, so I recommend reading Strange Academy. The Avengers for a short period of time, and S.H.I.E.L.D., right? So typically the acronym affiliations they mass collect people, villains, and heroes. So S.H.I.E.L.D. had to be on there somewhere. Okay, background: Haitian, Hungan, New Orleanian, and renowned psychologist. So the PhD Jericho Drum has is in psychology. He was actually he became a renowned psychologist before he became Brother Voodoo. So he was born in Haiti, and I'm going to start giving his background because I think the next part is me talking about his brother. So he was born in Haiti, and his brother was a voodoo worshiper. practitioner. His brother was a Hungan, which is a voodoo priest, right? And Jericho didn't really vibe with that. He didn't believe in any of that, so he ended up leaving Haiti to go to the United States and get his degree in psychology. And then he ends up moving back because his brother has been attacked by a different voodoo practitioner named Damballa. So that is a bit of a background as right now. So brother voodoo. So I want to clear this up because I've seen a lot of people talk about this. A legacy hero is a hero that is it is a hero title that is passed down. So it is a hero title that is passed down. So think about it like so Black Knight in Marvel is you pass the sword down through the family. The next person in the family takes the sword, they become the Black Knight. Thank you, Sid. The next person who takes the sword becomes the Black Knight. Batman, right? We see a lot of people become Batman when Bruce Wayne disappears for long periods of time and stuff like that. These are legacy heroes. So Brother Voodoo actually originates from the 1700s, way back when, possibly even before that. And it is essentially the master voodoo practitioner, and you can train and become Brother Voodoo, right? It's one of those things when the previous Brother Voodoo dies, you can have that role. So Jericho Drum, his brother Daniel Drum, was training. So he was a Hungan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I could be wrong. I read it, not listen. Right, but his brother's training. He's becoming a Hunu. He's training with Papa Jumbo, and he's trying to become Brother Voodoo when he gets attacked. So relationships, Doctor Strange. So we'll pause in the background. We'll continue in a second. Relationships, Doctor Strange, mentor / ally. So Brother Voodoo. We get Doctor Strange, and when we get Doctor Strange, he's already pretty strong. He goes through his own kind of developments of becoming like the Sorcerer Supreme and even higher levels. But we find Brother Voodoo, Doctor Voodoo. We find him kind of at the beginning of his like learning everything at the beginning of the comics. So when he ends up getting possessed, and he meets Doctor Strange because Doctor Strange kind of stops him from doing having a rampage, and he like unpossesses him. He exorcises him. So from then on, he becomes a bit of a mentor to Dr. Voodoo, and he starts learning like more things about arcane magic and things like that from Doctor Strange. So Daniel Drum is I've referenced him a few times. That is Jericho's brother, Dr. Voodoo's brother. He fights it's another Hungan, but it ends up being a serpent god named Damballa. So he's a voodoo priest that controls snakes really hard, and he gets killed, right? And that's so he gets hurt or whatever. Dr. Voodoo comes back as Jericho Drum, not Dr. Voodoo. He comes back and he's like, "Oh, brother, I don't want you to die." And then his brother's like, "Get revenge for me" or whatever, and then he dies. And so then Jericho Drum goes and confronts Damballa and gets his ass whooped. And we'll talk about that in a second. Papa Jumbo, mentor. He's the Hungan that teaches Jericho Drum after Daniel dies. He's the Hungan that teaches him kind of the ways of voodoo magic. And he is the one that gives him the ability to become Dr. Voodoo. So notable events. The ghost of Daniel Drum. So now we're actually going to get into this. So Daniel Drum dies. Jericho Drum goes, he trains with Papa Jumbo, and he becomes Dr. Voodoo, right? So when he becomes Dr. Voodoo, his brother comes to him in spectral form. So this is really important as far as Marvel Strike Force is concerned, or it should be, right? So the way that Dr. Voodoo possesses people and does a few different things with his magic is his brother stays within him, right? He has his brother's soul in him, and he sends his brother's soul out to possess people. He sends him out to do various kind of astral attacks and things like that. So it's actually really important that his brother is involved. So anyway, he gets his brother, and then he gets his ass kicked by Damballa. But then he goes to Jumbo, he learns voodoo magic, he becomes Brother Voodoo, and as Brother Voodoo goes back to Damballa and utterly wrecks his shit. Also, for those of you, I don't know if I haven't seen this come up at all. Daniel Drum is canon in the MCU. So we haven't had Dr. Voodoo yet. There's speculations that Dr. Voodoo is going to be in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. But in Doctor Strange the movie, Daniel Drum is one of the he is one of the sorcerers at the Sanctum Sanctorum when Caecilius attacks it. So if you go back and watch Doctor Strange, Daniel Drum is actually in that movie. So we do have at least I would say a very strong Easter egg that Dr. Voodoo exists in the MCU, but the only evidence is his brother, and his brother gets killed by Caecilius, so it is different than the comics. He doesn't get killed by Damballa, he gets killed by Caecilius. So that could be a point of contention for Jericho anyway. So in seeing him in a Doctor Strange 2, it's not out of the realm of possibility for sure. So check that out. Go back and watch Doctor Strange. Becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. This took me a bit to find out because I didn't read this part naturally. I read all the beginning stuff for Brother Voodoo and some other stuff and like a lot of modern stuff, but all I knew is that he became the Sorcerer Supreme. I didn't know how. So the Vishanti, who are like the gods that give Doctor Strange most of his power, they task him with fighting for them in a war, and Doctor Strange doesn't want to do it. So the Eye of Agamotto leaves Doctor Strange and goes to essentially the next eligible candidate, which is Dr. Voodoo. So Dr. Voodoo becomes the Sorcerer Supreme for a while, right? And in a current run, I thought that this was going to happen again, but there was kind of a twist at the end. So for those of you reading current comics, catch up. So yes, he becomes Sorcerer Supreme for a short period of time. I also want to make a note, Sorcerer Supreme, the different realms in the magic world of the Marvel have different Sorcerer Supremes, so there can be more than one at a time, but they won't be Sorcerer Supremes of the same thing. So for example, in-game, we have Magic, who came within like the last few months, Colossus' sister, Uncanny X-Men, whatever. She actually, in the comics, canonically, is the Sorcerer Supreme of Limbo, which is the Sorcerer Supreme of Hell. And so, what we're looking at with Jericho Drum, Dr. Voodoo, and Doctor Strange, they are the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, right? So, Earth is kind of it's very sought after because of its strength, because they have teams like the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and stuff like that. So, the Earth Sorcerer Supreme is typically considered one of the stronger ones. All right, so power level. So the way that I have this working, power level, multiversal means they can end multiple universes at the same time, maybe existence itself. Universal, they could change their universe or maybe some adjacent ones if they kind of focus on those specific things. Cosmic is planetary devastation. They can destroy a planet at will. Nuclear cities, they can destroy. Nuclear can destroy essentially the size of a city in like a blast, right? City, you could take down a strong, firm wall. So superhuman but not human. Greg is the undead Asgardian that Hela spawns. I could probably take a Greg. Right, so a Greg more or less is a normal person. So as far as Dr. Voodoo is considered, in my opinion, he is of universal power, especially with the Sorcerer Supreme role. He has very similar characteristics to Doctor Strange, and we've seen, for those of you who have seen, a recent Spider-Man movie that will go unnamed for a minute because I don't want to spoil anything. But he does affect the universe around him. And universes adjacent, right? So that, so Dr. Voodoo works on a very similar plane, even in the comics, altering things in timelines and referring to them as different dimensions, closing off things, stuff like that. So yes, as far as the Sorcerer Supreme goes, this is sort of where they land. So yes, Dr. Voodoo, a universal talent. For those of you who dug this, Dr. Voodoo coming to Marvel Strike Force, are you excited to see him? What did you think of my presentation? Did I hit everything important? Was there other things I should have hit on? Let me know in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. And hit me up on Twitch. I typically stream on Sundays, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. Hit me up. And like, comment, subscribe. Have a fantastic day. And stay cool, y'all.